Hi, and welcome to Bloody Good Reads. This week's author has a very great book out at the moment. Love the cover art, and you know me, I am a sucker for an amazing cover art. Her brand new book, The Cut, is out now, and her new book is also already planned for next year. So, welcome to the podcast this week, C.J Dotson.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. So, what we'd like to do here on Bloody Good Reads is force authors to pick 3 books they love because I'm a bastard. Um, but what I like to do with every guest is start off by asking them, how did you get into the horror genre?
So, as a reader, I got into the horror genre with Goosebumps. Um,
The
Back
best
when I
way of
was a
getting
kid.
in.
Yes, I had like three things that I would mostly read, and it was the Chronicles of Narnia over and over and over again. It was Animorphs, which I think you could make an argument that sometimes there are some horror elements to that one.
Oh,
Um,
I've seen the
Not
cover art, yeah.
yeah, well, and the cover art is such a, like, sanitized version of what those morphs were actually like. Like, if you read the books, it was
Hmm.
described as straight up, like, if there hadn't been something about the morphing technology that numbs pain, it would have been a screaming experience.
Yeah.
They talk about, like, and this is like a little tiny bit of a peeve of mine as an adult because I know that that's not like actually how the anatomy works, but they talk about like their knees like bending backwards when they turn into a dog and stuff, like very like it was a little bit graphic for kids, but that was part of the point of those books.
Hmm.
And then the other series that I just read constantly was Goosebumps all the time, forever. Um, and how I got into writing horror was I originally wrote science fiction and fantasy. And in 2020, my family and I moved to a new house. My son was almost 5 at the time. And he walked up to me and he said, "Mommy, who lives in this house?" And I said, "Well, we live here now." And he said, "No, someone else lives here too, hiding." And he said it very casually like that. And it was so spooky. And I posted about it on Twitter, and all of my Twitter friends at the time were like, "You should write a horror story." And I was like,
Hmm.
I don't know. And then I did, and it turns out it's like super fun to write horror.
I mean, did you read much else? Because obviously you grew up with Goosebumps. Was you an avid horror reader or more kind of directed towards sci-fi?
Um, I probably leaned more sci-fi and fantasy until I switched to writing horror, and then I started reading a lot more horror, but there was always horror in the mix also. Um, Everybody reads Stephen King. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I loved The Fisherman by John Langan. Um, just in and out, but I read a lot of sci-fi and fantasy until about 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay,
And
cool.
kind of I think that during the pandemic, horror felt, maybe this feels like counterintuitive, but horror felt more comfortable to read during such terrible times
It normally
than
is.
sci-fi and fantasy did.
It normally is.
Yeah.
um, so, where did your love for sci-fi and fantasy come from then? So, what was the authors and books that kind of drew you into that genre?
Um, I loved the wild difference from real life. Pure escapism. I liked the
Mm.
pure escapism. Um, I was always really into fantasy stories where that's why I liked Narnia. Kids go to a magical world. I used to I used to there's a scene in one of the Narnia books, I think the Silver Chair, where one of the characters, not one of the Pevensey children, but one of the like later introduced characters, is wanting to get back into Narnia, and he like stands and like recites. He makes up some little like chant to recite, and it didn't work, but I tried it anyway. um, or there was the Young Wizard series by Diane Duane, which was just one of my all-time favorite series. And it's the first one in the series is called So You Want to Be a Wizard. And a little girl finds a book in the children's section of her library that's called So You Want to Be a Wizard. And it's shelved with like So You Want to Be a Fireman, So You Want to Be a Doctor, So You Want to Be a Wizard. And when she opens it up, It's a real wizard's manual that tells her in the text that to anyone else picking up this book, it would look like a children's story. And so I was like convinced that maybe it really was the real wizard's manual and I was only seeing the children's story, but maybe it had like the wizard's oath in the beginning,
Hmm.
and maybe if I like meant it enough when I said it, I could I could break through, and that never worked either. But that impulse to still want to like I want out of the world. I want into something else. Uh that's why the book The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher is such a
Hmm.
delight. It's not one of my 3 that I'm picking for the podcast,
Okay.
but it is, I have to acknowledge it as a horror situation that I would just willingly dive into. The main
Hmm.
character is working in her uncle's museum, and he's gone for a little while. So she's minding it on her own, and she finds a hole in the wall, and it should be nothing beyond it. But instead, there's an impossible concrete like bunker beyond
Hmm.
it and a world beyond that. And I read that I read that and I was like, I would die. I would die. You could stand there and tell me like this is a horror world and you shouldn't go in it, and I would go in. Eyes open, full knowledge. I'm in that. I'm going through that hole into another world. Um, which
Yeah.
actually is probably why I like writing so much.
Well, yeah. I mean, writing sci-fi and fantasy. I suppose you can build your own kind of big world as well, which is always nice with that kind of genre. Even with horror, I suppose if you're doing kind of a series as well, that world you create around that as well. But yeah, but no,
When I first
I do like T. Kingfisher. She writes really well. She writes really well.
Oh yeah, I love T. Kingfisher books. Um, when I first started writing horror, the first time I wrote horror and there was no world building, I was like, this feels like cheating. This feels like I'm like getting to skip a whole lot of the work. So that was a fun aspect of that switch.
Hmm. Cool. Right. So what we'll do before we get into your work, what we like to do here is pick 3 books we love. So, what is your first bloody good read?
I'm gonna be such a dork and talk about a book that's getting like so much attention right now anyway.
That's fun.
It comes out on Tuesday at the time this episode comes out, it'll already be out. It's When the
Yeah.
Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. I
Hmm.
got to read an advanced reader copy on NetGalley, and I love to do this thing where if I know I'm gonna like a movie or a book or a show, and I knew I was gonna like this book because I had only recently read Nat Cassidy's debut, Mary, which was I loved it. It was phenomenal. So I knew I was gonna like this new one. I go in as blind as I possibly can. I try not to look up anything about it. I don't read the back of the book copy. I don't I don't listen to interviews. I want to go in fresh and pure. I almost knocked my own headphones off. Um, and with only the expectations that like can glean from the title and the cover art. Um, and I am so glad that I did. I had no idea what I was getting into with this book.
Mm.
I think that everybody who reads it should go in with as little idea of what you're getting into as you could, because it is whatever you think it's going to be. It is wilder and better than what you're thinking. It's one of those experience, like you read it and you just know from the first second that this is going to be one of your favorites. Um, it's When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy is an incredibly good time, and also terrifying and heartbreaking and gross and fun, and like there were parts of that book that had me like delighted, and parts of that book that had me in tears, and parts of it where I felt like I couldn't breathe, and it was non-stop. I loved it so
Mm.
much.
I weirdly have 2 copies of it because I've got 2 different proof copies. But I've got a UK version, I've got a US version. It's yeah, beautiful covers as well.
Oh yeah, he got really good covers for both of those.
Hmm. Hmm. Very good pick. Very
That's a
good pick. And
really good book.
We've had Mr. Cassidy on here before, so it's yeah, always happy to push some of his work.
Yeah,
Um,
he seems like a cool dude too.
he's such a nice guy. Such a
I love that.
nice. Cool. So your brand new book. The Cut. This is your debut novel, correct?
Yes, it is.
So tell us a little bit about the book and the inspiration behind it.
Sure. The cut follows Sadie Miles. She is a young mother with a 3-year-old daughter by her late husband, who has just discovered that she's pregnant by her abusive fiance. And discovering the pregnancy sort of forces her to come right up face to face with the fact that she cannot stay in this relationship forever, that she hasn't even been able to picture a time beyond the wedding itself. Um, and so after a couple of days of kind of obsessing over it, hiding the pregnancy, panicking when she thinks that, like if he's going to find out or not, she waits until her fiance goes to work and she packs a bag for herself and her 3-year-old Izzy and hits the road and winds up hours north at a rundown past its prime historic hotel called Larpin Hotel on the shores of Lake Erie, where she gets a job as a housekeeper and also secures a temporary room to stay in while she and her daughter get back on her feet. And she thinks that her luck is turned around and everything is going to be okay now. And it is not. On the very first night that Sadie is there, she sees a guest struggling in the hotel pool and she runs downstairs to help them, and when she gets there, the water is empty and calm, like nothing has been wrong. And her manager insists no one has even come through the lobby all night. But after her experiences with her ex, Sadie is not going to let anybody tell her anymore that what she's seeing or feeling or experiencing isn't real. And so she starts to dig in for herself because even though they've got nowhere else to go, she does have to try it at least to make sure that this is a safe place for her and her daughter and her unborn baby until they can get back on their feet.
Where did you get the inspiration for this one then?
The very first little bit of the idea came from a beach that I used to hang out at myself a lot in my late 20s or late teens and early 20s. Um, Larpin Hotel, the beach that it overlooks, is also overlooked by this looming power plant that's got floodlights and fencing. And when I was in my 20s, I used to hang out all the time at this beach in Avon Lake, Ohio, that had a power plant overlooking the beach with these giant floodlights. The beach was never
Mm.
dark. They used the water to, I think, to cool their machinery and then siphoned it back out into the lake. So it was always warm there. And my friends and I used to go there all the time. We probably should not have swam in that water, but
Hmm.
I'm almost 40 and I'm okay. So it was probably all right. Um, and one time while I was there, I was 100% sure that I saw something bioluminescent in the water. And, I'm sure there are probably freshwater bioluminescent organisms, and I just don't know about them. And I don't like care to research them because I kind of like this probably goes back to my whole I would throw myself through a hole into another world if I could thing, but I would rather just have in my head that it could have been something bad and creepy and weird than look it up and be like, it's a snail. Like,
A very
so yeah,
shiny
that image
snail.
stuck with me. Yeah,
Yeah.
like something that glows but isn't fun. Um, that image really stuck with me, and so when I was casting around for new manuscript ideas after I had finished a previous shelved idea, um, that one came back to me, and the idea of doing something with the lake sort of built itself from there.
Cool. Awesome. So this is out now because obviously we've tried to
Yes,
put this interview for a while, and yeah, things keep coming
when
up. So it's out brand new out now. So go and check it out today and go and order your copy right now. Awesome. So let's get on to your second book read. So what is the second book you brought along this week?
it's a collection of short stories published in 1990 about the Vietnam War. It's called The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. I had to read it for the first time as a freshman in college. Um, Although I think you guys don't call it college. In England,
Uni,
it's like
uni.
there's different like yeah. But
Yeah.
so it was fresh out of high school, my first like college English class, and I was kind of salty that I was not able to test. It was a college comp 2, and I had tested out of college comp 1, and they didn't let people test out of college comp 2, so I was a little bit salty about it. And then the professor assigns this collection of war stories. And like I said, I'm pretty much firmly a genre fiction reader. And
Mhm.
so I was going to not read it at all. My plan was to pay attention to the class discussions and skate through like I did in high school. Um, I hope my high school teachers are not listening. Um, but but the college professor, he completely called me out on it. He could tell that I had not read a word of it. Like there was no amount of paying attention in class discussion that was making up for actually having read this one. And he pulled me aside and he was like, "You haven't started it yet, have you?" And I was like, "I have not." And he said, "Listen, you need to give it a shot. I think you will really like it." And I, at this point, was weeks behind the rest of the class to even start it. And I went out and I started it that day and I finished it, I think, that day. It was just it's one of the most incredible books I've ever read. The writing is phenomenal. Um, it is it is a collection of stories set during and about the Vietnam War, and they're like semi-autobiographical. It's hard to kind of tell where the fiction is and where it's not. There are parts of the book where instead of being a short story, it's almost like an essay on what is real, what's what kind of reality, what kind of truth matters at the end of the day. There's happening truth, the bare facts, and there's story truth, and that's telling it in a way that makes the person that is listening to you feel it the way you felt it when it happened, because it happened and it's done, and all you have now are your feelings about it. And which one of those two types of truth matters more and when and under what circumstances. Um, and it's just a gorgeous read. And there are parts of it that have stuck with me more than others. There's a story in it called Sweetheart of the Song Trebong that is about one of the one of the kids. I didn't think of them as kids when I read this when I was like 19, but these are all like, 18 to 22-year olds that were going and doing these things. But one of these kids finds a way to fly his girlfriend from the States to the war zone in Vietnam for like a visit. And she meets the Green Berets and she goes all in with them. And there's this image of this girl wearing her like fuzzy pink sweater and a necklace strung with human tongues and being so at home in this environment.
Mm.
And I think that that story ends with him, like the narrator saying like, For all I know, she's still out there." And I've read this is one of those books I've read over and over and over and over again. And one of the times that I read that, I was sitting in my car outside of work after a shift because I would read and walk. And then I would get to my car and I would finish whatever section I was on. And I look up and I'm in the parking garage at this like high-end outdoor shopping mall where I used to work at a bookstore, and the parking garage is completely empty and the darkness is pressing in, and I've just read like, "For all I know, she's still out there wearing her little sweater and her necklace of human tongues." And I was like, "I need to go home fast." Um, it lingers, but it's
Mm.
gorgeously written. Not a wasted word. And and the very last story does a pivot away from the Vietnam setting in a way that I always thought was really supposed to drive home the fact that yes, this is a collection of Vietnam War stories. Yes, it's about the reality of what war was like then, but it's also more than that. It's about the truth stuff, the what is real, what is true, what kind of truth matters and when. It was such a good book. I highly recommend it.
Awesome. Another really good pick, and one we haven't had before, so even better. So
Cool.
I like it when we get new books on here.
Nice.
So you've already announced your next book, which
hmm
is These Familiar Walls. Is there much you can say about the release yet? Have you finished writing it, or?
It's actually the first horror manuscript I ever wrote.
Okay.
Um, and it's the one I wrote during 2020 after my kid said that creepy thing. Um,
Okay.
I was like, I'm gonna write a haunted house novel. It's a dual timeline haunted house novel. It follows in 1998, preteen Amber meets a new kid in the neighborhood, and Amber's an outcast. She's very lonely. This kid moves to the neighborhood at the beginning of summer, and so she thinks this is the perfect chance to make a friend, and I get to start sixth grade and middle school with a friend. So she really ignores her family's misgivings about this kid. He's weird. He's got very like dead eyes. He loves fire. He's a remorseless kind of person. She ignores all of these misgivings and instigates a really turbulent friendship with this boy who grows up to 22 years later murder her parents. And he is in turn shot and killed by his accomplice in the home where her parents were murdered, in her childhood home. Um, and so in 2020, Amber inherits the home, and because of lockdowns and financial problems and uh, the challenges of her and her husband and two kids living in a little condo with no yard and no school and no getting to leave for work because of the lockdowns, Amber kind of ignores her own misgivings this time and moves her family into the home about 5 months after her parents and one of their murderers were killed there.
Mhm.
And something menacing is in the home now, and there's this presence that's threatening Amber and her family, and she has to figure out what it is and resolve her own lifetime of uh, insecurities and secrets and problems in order to protect the life that she's built for herself. And it's a dual
Cool.
timeline, so it goes back and forth between the two timelines. And I wrote it in 2020. Um, so it was kind of cathartic to write that
Mhm.
during lockdowns and have the lockdown story. It didn't feel like too much for me. It kind of felt for me like taking control of the situation in a way. But
Mhm.
I'm really excited that it's going to be coming out and that it's getting its chance to be in the
Mhm.
world. Because when I was originally trying to query it to literary agents and to publishers, it was February of 2021, and everyone was like, too soon, it's way too soon for a 2020 story, understandably.
Yeah. No, it sounds really good. I'm really looking forward to reading
Thank
that.
you. It was
It's
very fun to
yeah.
write that.
It's an
Thank
interesting with him killing her parents and the friendship. I'm imagining quite a lot can happen in the kind of look backs, and yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. Looking forward to this
thank you. It was really fun. I'm working on the copy edits for it right now, the like last little grammar tweaks and
one.
stuff, and it's one that I haven't gotten sick of rereading over and over and over again while I work on it yet, so I feel like that's probably a good sign.
It's always a good sign. Awesome. So let's go for your final pick. So, what is your final Bloody
This was such a hard it was
Mary?
so hard to narrow down 3, and I just kept returning over and over and over again. This is gonna be such a tonal shift, to a book that I loved as a kid, and it's Ella Enchanted by Gail Carson Levine. I read that book so many times as that book came out in 1997, so I was 11 when that book came out. I was like the target audience. It's a reimagining of the Cinderella story where Ella she's cursed to always be obedient. She is compelled to obey any direct command that is given to her. Um, and I read it so many times that I have the first page still mostly memorized. And then they made a movie, and it was hands down one of the worst book to film adaptations I've ever.
Hmm.
I think that if I had gone into it without having read and been obsessed with and absolutely loved Ella Enchanted as a kid, I think I would have really liked it. Like it was probably fun, but it was a butchering of the book itself. And I was they added like an evil uncle and like a whole sub it was complete. They kept the only things they kept the same were the characters' names and the fact of the curse. And everything else, the whole rest of the
Completely
plot was
different.
just completely different. I hated this movie so much that, and you know what's funny, in preparation for this chat, I was just sort of idly scrolling the Goodreads reviews for Ella Enchanted. Um, and I stumbled upon several reviews that instead of talking about how good the book is, just talk about how much the movie made people mad. Loved the book. I hated this movie so much that when almost 10 years ago, when my son was born and he was kind of a difficult baby, and you're not like allowed to be mad at a baby. They're a baby. He just, but I just needed to eat or sleep like ever.
Hmm.
Um, and so what I did was I one day I turned on Ella Enchanted to watch that instead so that I could be mad at that instead of my kid. And it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, up for like midnight taking care of the baby stuff. And I was talking to a friend of mine who lived in LA at the time, which has like a 3 hour time difference. So for him, it was only around midnight. Um, and I was sort of ranting about how bad I hate this movie, forgetting that Eric Idle from the Monty Pythons was the narrator in that movie. And my friend, according to him, was at the time dating Idle's daughter. And he was like,
Okay.
"Oh, cool. I'll tell Eric that next time I see him." And I was like, "I hope he didn't. I hope he didn't, because there's a chance that like 10 years ago I was so mad at this movie that I accidentally like conveyed my dislike of it directly to, well, not directly, but roundaboutly to, but actually like it might actually, my dislike of this movie might actually have been delivered to this like iconic comedian and actor, and that's, I really hope that that was all bluffing and idle talk on my friend's part.
Yeah.
Like, I'm fingers crossed he never. I didn't follow up because I didn't want to find out if he actually did. I just was like, oh no. But the book is
That
great
is
and
fair.
it's clever, and I loved Ella as a character. She had this rebellious streak. She never knew if it was in spite of the curse um or or if she would have been like that already anyway. She had this rebellious streak that I, as a preteen girl, really appreciated, like watching her like mouth off in a way that you wish you could do when you're a kid, but you don't quite feel
Hmm.
brave enough to mouth off. Um, I used to read her lines out loud like I was acting. I was
Yeah.
obsessed with this book. And it's charming, and it's well written, and it's cute, and it's not at all what you might expect to talk about on a horror podcast, but I loved it.
You'd be surprised what books have been picked on this podcast. So it's not that strange, don't you worry.
Good.
Awesome. Three really good picks there. And one
Thanks.
very passionate go for Ella Enchanted. So let's, yeah, you're really going to give that a go.
Yeah, I mean, the
um,
book is great. The movie is not.
no, yeah,
And
no,
then the actor who played Prince Charmant in the movie went on to be was his name Hugh in Hannibal? In the Hannibal
yeah,
TV show, the
yeah, I
Hannibal
know,
show,
yeah, yeah,
the the sad boy, the main
yeah,
character, sad boy. Um, that
that one.
actor, I was like halfway through the first season of that show. A friend of mine had strongly recommended it to me before I recognized him, because I've got a terrible memory. And then one day, like halfway through an episode, it clicked, and I was like, "You're kidding me! No!" My friend admitted that she had not told me that it was him because she was worried that it would bias me against it, because they all, like, everybody who knew me when Ella Enchanted came out as a movie is fully aware I was not quiet about my feelings about that movie. The actors in it all did a fine job. I'm not like I'm not getting down on anybody who was
Yeah,
in that movie. I am just, they
angry
were
at the
trying to
angry it
capitalize.
wasn't the source material. Yeah.
Well, okay, so, like, they were trying to capitalize on the Shrek vibes. Shrek had just recently been really, really popular, and even though this was live action, they were trying to kind of, like, Shrek had those, like, quasi, like going into Duloc, and there were there was the amusement park waiting line. Shrek had
Right.
these, like, little bits of, like, quasi modern living in the fantasy setting, and Ella Enchanted tried to, like, capitalize on those vibes. They've added like singing and musicals and numbers and stuff, and I get why the changes were made from like a
Mm,
marketing perspective, I guess. But also, I just wanted to see that story as a movie. I just wanted to see my
yeah.
beloved book as a movie. Um, the only other movie that I can think of that was as poor an adaptation, in my opinion, was World War Z. If Brad
Mm,
Pitt wanted to make a zombie movie, he could have just called it Brad Pitt versus Zombies, and people would have paid $1 million to see it. He did not, they did not, they did
have to do
not
it.
have to take World War Z. They didn't have to. They did it. Ella Enchanted is the
Hmm.
same.
It's strange to make a movie which is basically just a guide to survive an apocalypse and make it into whatever they did make it into with that movie. It was not a good movie. Absolutely
No,
awful
I
movie.
think what World War Z should have been. Do you remember when this like brief period of time when Discovery Channel was doing mockumentaries and they did one with
Hmm.
like dragons and they did one with like I think mermaids?
Yeah, yeah.
They should have done World War Z. That would have been perfect. That would
Hmm.
have been incredible. Um, Alas, instead we got like the weirdest CGI zombie like wave piles. I didn't like
Yeah,
it.
it wasn't was not a bad.
No.
Awesome. So that is three amazing bloody good reads, and obviously your brand new book again is out now. That's The Cut. Go and check it out now, and also be ready for a new book when it does come out in 2026. So
April of 2026. Yep.
there
These
you go.
it's going to be called These Familiar Walls.
A year from now,
Yes.
exact year from now. There
I'm
you go.
excited.
So look forward to that one, and I'm sure we'll be able to chat about that when it gets near to time as well.
I would love to.
Awesome. Is there anything else you are working on at the moment, or is it you're just finishing off the new?
I've got a campground horror novel manuscript that I'm working on that I've got to send to my agent. I've got to finish the revisions. I came up against this problem that I should have expected because everybody I know who's had a book come out warned me to expect it, and I still was like, I'll be fine, which is for the last couple of months leading up to my book coming out, I've found it incredibly difficult to focus on new
Mm-hmm.
work. Um, and I think a large part of that is because writing for me has always felt like the only thing that's completely in my control. Like you sit down and you write and you are the god of this tiny world that you're creating and nothing can happen in it that you don't want to have happen. And the closer you get to a book coming out, the further out of your control it goes. And that's how it should be. And that's the correct trajectory. But it feels just wrong to like in my chest, in my guts, it feels wrong to have this be further and further out of my control. So I will sit down to start working on my new manuscript and my brain goes, "But what about the cut? We could fix it. There's nothing to fix. It's done. It's out." And so then that just turns into me like checking, obsessively wanting to check on it because then at least for like a
Mm-hmm.
second while I'm checking on it, it feels like I have control of it again.
Yeah.
Um, and so then I go to Goodreads, and I shouldn't go to Goodreads. And everybody who knows me is like, you should block Goodreads from your computer, and I should, but I don't. Um, and so I look at it and then I do myself emotional damage and then it's harder to focus on my writing again after that. Uh, so I do have a new manuscript that I'm working on, um, but not as quickly lately as I'm
Mm-hmm.
used to. And I can feel that feeling sort of going away a little bit now that the book is actually out. Now that it's out, the feeling that there should be something I can do is kind of starting to fade a little bit, like accept
Yeah.
like this is over now. It's not over, like I'm still like talking about it and going places and having a great time with it,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that I'm starting to chill out a little bit, which is good. I need to chill out a little bit. Um, and then I think that, but I'm really excited about this campground horror novel that I'm working on. I think I think the ending is gonna make people sad.
Good. That's what we like to hear in a horror book.
That's my
Awesome.
goal with this one.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast this week. Where can people
Absolutely.
find you if you'd like to be found?
Ooh, would I like to be found? Um, I am on Blue Sky. I am hang on, I don't like how long Blue Sky is. It's cj-dotson.bsky.social. Um, and I am on Instagram. On Instagram, I am CJ_dots, DOTS. I've also got a website, cjdotsonauthor.com, and newsletter that this month I'm a little late on putting an issue out of, but I have not forgotten an issue yet. Um, and that's CJ Dotson's Dreadful Dispatch on Substack.
Perfect. So go to our link below. The links will be in the description below, the links below. The description below will be on there, so go and check them out as well. Again, thank you to C.J Dotson for being on the podcast this week. Go check out the book. The book cover is amazing. The book is also amazing. I'm very slow at reading books, so I'm getting through little bits and pieces at that time. But yes, as always, a huge shout out to our sponsor, Unported Book Club. They are the UK's best and biggest horror and thriller book box service, bringing the wonders of a haunted bookshop straight to your door each month. You can get the bare bones box, which is just books, or if you're like me, you like all the tut and everything else that goes with it, you can get the full guts box, which is a brand new book, a possibly haunted second-hand book, and also another indie title, a magazine, or something else very special indeed. I know this month's edition there is 2 sprayed-edged editions of some amazing authors' books. I don't know what it is yet. We'll find out in the next couple of weeks. But they are also getting some really big names coming up in the next few months, so you don't want to miss out on that. Go to Abominable Book Club at createjoy.com. Don't forget, also inside the Full Guts box, you get goodies like badges, bookmarks, UK snacks, UK drinks. You also can get sometimes canvas bags and other weird and wonderful things. To go and check them out, go to Abominable Book Club at createjoy.com. Use the code BloodyGoodReads at checkout to get 10% off your next box. And yeah, that is us again. I know it's a bit late for NFTs at the moment. I do apologise about that. Some stuff had come up. But hopefully we're back on track again on the podcast. So do keep checking out. Check out also our sister podcast, Bloody Good Screen. We're in our 90 special at the moment. Episodes aren't as regular as they were last year because it is hard to book in episodes with the guys because they're busy as well. But we're doing our 90s at the moment. So next episode to come out on that should come out just before this episode. So that is, if I can remember rightly, Jurassic Park and Pulp Fiction, which is a weird double bill. But that is our next episode to come out on here. And yeah, follow us on Twitter at BloodyGoodReads, on Instagram at BloodyGoodReads, TikTok BloodyGoodReads, and all the other places at BloodyGoodReads. That's where we are. Go and check us out. And as always, thank you for listening to the podcast, and we'll see you next time.
I've got a little task for you. Oh, for fuck's sake! What have I done? I can sweat myself into the kettle.
Thinks cheese is spicy.
I have printed out some pamphlets.
Joy to the world.
Please stop trying to kill Mother!
It's my wedding day.
Well, let me tell you something, Mother!
What the fuck is that?
The chances of making it to 0 to none when you're dealing with budgeons and dragons.
My name is Hamburger. I have a gun.
I've got a little task for you. Oh, for fuck's sake! What have I done? I can sweat myself into the kettle.
Thinks cheese is spicy.
I have printed out some pamphlets.
Joy to the world.
Please stop trying to kill Mother!
It's my wedding day.
Well, let me tell you something, Mother!
What the fuck is that?
The chances of making it to 0 to none when you're dealing with budgeons and dragons.
My name is Hamburger. I have a gun.